Paleoanthropology has long wondered if Neanderthals ever set foot in Africa. Their bones and tools dominate the record of Ice Age Europe, stretching from Spain to Siberia. But the southern margin of their world has remained uncertain. Did they cross into North Africa, leaving behind traces in caves along the African coast? Or did the Sahara form an impenetrable boundary that they could not breach? Newly reanalyzed evidence from Libya suggests that the answer may lie further south than once imagined. Haua Fteah, which translates to the Great Cave, lies less than a mile from the Mediterranean coast, its massive mouth opening at the foot of the Jebel Akhdar escarpment. Excavated in the 1950s and revisited by later teams, the cave preserves one of the deepest and most continuous sequences of Pleistocene occupation anywhere in North Africa. Layers stretch back more than 150,000 years, encompassing the last interglacial to the last glacial maximum, and the slow return to more temperate Holocene climates. Within these deposits, archaeologists found hearths, shells, animal bones, bone tools, and 2 human mandibles. These mandibles have long been debated. First described as Neanderthaloid, later studies noted their mosaic character, lacking a true retromolar gap, robust, with dental wear patterns and shapes close to Levantine Neanderthal fossils, such as tabun. They stand as fragments of a North African population hovering between archaic and modern human morphologies, possibly representing Neanderthals expanding southward, or an intermediate lineage adapted to the Mediterranean. The mandibles are not alone. The stone tool industries mirror those of Levantine sites, including Levallois flakes and side scrapers, while retaining local adaptations. Similarities to the assemblages in the Levant point to shared traditions across a corridor of migration when sea levels were far lower than today. If today the Mediterranean floods the coastal shelf, in glacial times shorelines were tens of kilometers farther north, and many campsites are now submerged. Haua Fteah survives as a rare preserved remnant of that vanished world. This video examines the Neanderthal presence in Libya through 3 lenses: the mandibles, the stone tool record, and comparisons with neighboring sites from the Levant to the Red Sea. Together, these strands illuminate how Neanderthal populations may have ranged along the southern Mediterranean and adapted to fluctuating climates and coastlines. Habitat modeling suggests the region would have been prime Neanderthal habitat, as they were masters of the Mediterranean climate from Spain to Italy to the Levant. The 2 mandibles were dated to around 65,000 to 73,000 years ago. This places them within the Levallois-Mousterian phase of the cave, a period marked by fire traces, hearths, and dense lithic scatters. The adult mandible preserves the left ascending ramus, with the 2nd and 3rd molars intact. The juvenile mandible shows an unerupted molar still in its crypt. Archaeologists who first examined the bones suggested that the Haua Fteah mandible belonged to a young woman between 18 and 25 years of age. The teeth tell a story. The 2nd molar heavily worn from years of grit-laden food, the 3rd molar only slightly touched, and premolars indicating a fully functional chewing apparatus. The mandibles attracted immediate attention for their intermediate features. Neanderthal mandibles often exhibit a retromolar gap, where the molars fall short of the ascending ramus, leaving space behind the teeth. The Haua Fteah mandible shows no such gap, yet the overall robustness, angle, and muscular attachment areas suggest a heavy build consistent with Neanderthal chewing loads. Comparisons with Levantine mandibles deepen the puzzle. In the Levant, some mandibles show massive corpora and thick symphyses, while others show more gracile morphologies. Haua Fteah sits between these poles, neither fully Neanderthal nor fully modern. Some argue that these mandibles represent a North African population bridging archaic and modern traits. In this sense, this site contributes to the ongoing debate over whether Neanderthals ever truly established themselves in North Africa, or whether we are seeing parallel development of local archaic Homo sapiens. If these mandibles belong to Neanderthals, this extends their range deep into Africa, well beyond the Levant. If not, then the cave documents a hybrid or transitional population, a group in contact with Neanderthals to the east, but maintaining its own identity. Either way, The bones demand that we see North Africa not as an isolated cul-de-sac, but as part of the broader Neanderthal world. Archaeologists originally labelled the earliest tools in Libya as pre-orignation, linking them to Levantine blade industries. Later reassessment, however, revealed abundant Levallois cores and flakes, placing these assemblages firmly within the Middle Stone Age or Mousterian tradition. The Levallois-Mousterian levels contained hearths, scrapers and other stone tools. Flakes dominated, but blades and bladelets also appeared. While archaeologists once thought they saw Aterian stemmed points, later analysis showed no true stemmed pieces. Instead, the assemblages parallel Levantine Mousterian sets, characterized by scrapers and notches. Unlike inland Levantine sites, the Libyan cave reveals a literal adaptation. Marine mollusks, crabs and fish bones appear in the pre-orignation deposits, showing that the cave's occupants exploited the nearby coast. The tools, though rooted in the Mousterian, thus supported a distinctive economy, combining large mammal hunting, including aurochs, gazelle, Barbary sheep, with marine gathering. The presence of a worked bone point and even a bone flute-like artifact hints at symbolic or musical activity alongside subsistence strategies. Tabun Cave presents a near-perfect parallel. Its Mousterian sequence shows the same reliance on Levallois reduction, the same predominance of scrapers, and similar faunal remains of gazelle and aurochs. These resemblances strengthen the case that the Libyan populations belong to the same cultural and perhaps biological sphere as the Levantine Neanderthals. During the coldest phases of the Ice Age, sea levels dropped by more than 100 meters. The Mediterranean shoreline retreated far north, exposing a vast plain now lost beneath the waves. The cave, today 1 kilometer from the sea, would have overlooked a fertile coastal corridor dotted with lagoons and estuaries, a continuous coastline from Tabun Caves to Libya along a sea sometimes referred to as the Levantine Sea. Archaeological sites along this plain were almost certainly drowned as the seas rose again. What survives may be the tip of a submerged cultural landscape. The faunal record bears witness to fluctuating climates. In wetter times, aurochs grazed near the coast. In drier times, Barbary sheep dominated the hills. Through it all, the cave's inhabitants endured, leaving behind hearths, tools, and the broken mandibles of their dead. When the cave was occupied, sea levels during glacial maxima were often 300 feet lower than today. The cave, now 1 kilometer from the water, would have overlooked a vast coastal plain. Campsites, kill sites, and shell middens dotted that plain, now drowned beneath the Mediterranean. The rarity of Mousterian sites along the North African littoral may reflect this submersion rather than true absence. Reanalysis of the faunal assemblage showed that the proportions of Barbary sheep versus aurochs varied through time in response to climate. During wetter phases, cattle proliferated. In drier ones, Barbary sheep dominated. These oscillations matched global climatic shifts recorded in marine isotope stages. The Neanderthal or archaic humans of Libya endured cycles of abundance and scarcity, sometimes feasting on large bovids, sometimes relying on hardy mountain sheep and tortoises. At Tabun, skeletal remains show clear Neanderthal features, especially in the famous Tabun female. The lithic parallels suggest that populations used the same Levallois methods across 1,000 miles of Mediterranean coastline. If Neanderthals occupied Tabun, then similar toolmakers could also have been Neanderthal or closely related hybrids. The debate has taken on new significance since the reanalysis of Shukbah Cave. There, a child's molar was conclusively identified as Neanderthal, the southernmost fossil of the species known to date. Even more surprising, the tooth was found alongside Nubian Levallois tools, a stone knapping method previously thought to be the hallmark of Homo sapiens. The association at Shukbah overturned decades of assumptions, showing that Neanderthals shared technological repertoires once reserved for our own species. If Neanderthals carried Nubian Levallois techniques south, then the possibility of their presence in North Africa no longer looks like speculation. It becomes a hypothesis supported by evidence. The rediscovery of the Shukbah Cave collection has revolutionized how archaeologists think about Neanderthals and their southern limits. The child's molar, conclusively identified as Neanderthal by micro-CT scans, confirmed that Neanderthals lived as far south as the Judean hills. But the stone tools were even more surprising. The assemblage included at least a dozen Nubian Levallois points and more than a dozen cores. These are characterized by a distinctive distal ridge produced through divergent flake removals guiding the detachment of elongated points. For decades, the Nubian method had been regarded as an African signature, part of the so-called Nubian complex, linked to modern human dispersals from the Nile Valley and Arabia. Its appearance alongside a Neanderthal tooth shattered this tidy association. The Shukbah evidence shows that Neanderthals could master and employ the Nubian Levallois technique. They were not bound to a narrow technological repertoire, but adapted their flaking strategies according to local conditions and traditions. This discovery reverberates across the region. If Neanderthals in the Levant could produce Nubian Levallois tools, then similar artifacts in North Africa, long assumed to signal Homo sapiens, might instead reflect shared or convergent practices. This means that the Levallois flakes and points found in Libya deposits may not automatically exclude Neanderthals. On the contrary, they may strengthen the case for their presence, since the same technological signatures now link Levantine Neanderthals to Nubian methods once confined to Africa. On the opposite side of the Red Sea from Africa, Tor Fara in Jordan has yielded Middle Stone Age stone tools. Some scholars argue these belong to a Neanderthal tradition, perhaps representing groups expanding down the Red Sea corridor. If so, then Libya sits at the western end of a broad band of Neanderthal influence, bounded by Levantine caves in the east and Red Sea sites to the south. The debate hinges on whether the mandibles truly represent Neanderthals. Arguments in favor include morphological robustness, Levallois Mousterian tools identical to Neanderthal sites in the Levant, and occupation 60,000 to 75,000 years ago, prime Neanderthal periods. Arguments against include the absence of retromolar gap, a key Neanderthal trait, and a closer fit to early Homo sapiens. Some studies assign the mandibles to modern humans and suggest the fossils may represent an indigenous North African lineage evolving toward modernity. Perhaps the truth lies in between. Neanderthals and early moderns interbred in the Levant, as DNA suggests. The mandibles may preserve the western echo of this hybrid zone, where Neanderthal migrants met African populations and produced offspring with mixed morphologies. The question is not whether the cave was occupied, its long sequence proves that, but who those occupants were. Earlier interpretations that dismissed Neanderthal involvement now look premature. The mandibles, though mosaic in form, fit within the range of Levantine Neanderthals when variation is taken into account. The stone tools, once thought to exclude Neanderthals, now connect them more strongly, thanks to the Shukbah discoveries. And the geographic logic is compelling. If Neanderthals reached the Judean hills, why not continue a little farther, into the green uplands of Libya? The simplest explanation may be that Libya was indeed part of the Neanderthal world, or at least a zone where Neanderthals and modern humans overlapped. In such frontier regions, hybridization and cultural exchange were likely. The blurred traits of the mandibles could be the biological echo of that contact. Haua Fteah is not merely a cave in Libya, it is a crossroads of continents. Its mandibles capture a moment when archaic and modern humans blurred. Its stone tools speak of continuity with Levantine Neanderthal traditions. Its faunal record testifies to resilience through shifting climates, and its position facing a now submerged coastal plain reminds us that much of the story remains drowned beneath the sea. If we accept Neanderthal presence here, then their range stretched from Morocco to Libya, encompassing the full northern rim of Africa. If instead we see hybrids, then Haua Fteah reveals how fluid species boundaries were. Either way, the cave holds lessons about adaptation, survival, and the shared heritage of Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. Indeed, the story of humanity in North Africa has been overshadowed by discoveries from the Levant. Yet scattered caves and quarries in Morocco and along Algerian coast have begun to reveal a far more complicated tale. These fossils, fragmentary skulls and mandibles exhumed from Jebel Irhoud, Dar es Sultan, and the caves of Contrabandiers and El Harhoura, carry echoes of two worlds. They are unmistakably human, but they also preserve the shadows of Neanderthals, suggesting that Northwest Africa was not isolated, but part of a shared evolutionary drama stretching across the Mediterranean. The first hint of this connection came with Jebel Irhoud. When miners stumbled upon the site in the 1960s, the skulls were initially declared Neanderthal. Their robust brow ridges and elongated brain cases seemed to match what had been found in Europe. Only later, with modern dating techniques, did scientists realize that these bones were much older, about 315,000 years, and belonged to some of the earliest Homo sapiens. Yet the resemblance to Neanderthals was not an illusion. The Irhoud hominins combined a modern retracted face with a primitive elongated brain case. In many ways, they looked like a mirror image of Neanderthals. Two lineages diverging from a common ancestor, developing similar solutions to survival in parallel but separate environments. That resemblance deepens when the later fossils are brought into focus. In the caves of Dar es Sultan near Rabat, excavations uncovered a partial skull and mandibles. The best preserved specimen has become one of the clearest indicators of the Neanderthal connection in North Africa. The skull shows extraordinary breadth, strong brow ridges, and a robusticity that recalls the massive faces of Neanderthals. At the same time, the associated mandible lacks the classic retromolar gap of Neanderthals and positions its mental foramen under the premolars in a way consistent with Homo sapiens. Morphologically, Dar es Sultan straddles a boundary. It looks more Neanderthal-like than later North Africans, but it cannot be classified as Neanderthal outright. Detailed geometric morphometric studies strengthen this impression. When researchers compared the mandibles of Dar es Sultan and other late Middle Stone Age fossils to Neanderthals, they found surprising overlaps. In fact, 1/3 of the closest matches for Dar es Sultan's jaw fell within the Neanderthal sample. This is not an accident of bone shape, but a sign of shared evolutionary pressures or retained ancestry. The North African fossils show features such as robust jaws, prognathism, and wide ramus breadth, all of which resonate with Neanderthal morphology. These traits, however, appear side by side with features that are uniquely human, creating a mosaic that cannot be neatly assigned to one group or the other. This mosaic character has profound implications. It suggests that Northwest Africa was not simply a staging ground for modern humans on their way out of Africa. Instead, it was a frontier zone where ancient populations carried both modern and archaic features. Some of these traits may reflect deep common ancestry with Neanderthals, inherited from Middle Pleistocene populations that predated the split between the two lineages. Others could represent parallel adaptations to similar environments: heavy chewing demands, cold winds sweeping from the Atlantic, and the need for robust faces to withstand harsh climates. And still others may hint at the possibility of contact, interbreeding between early Homo sapiens and Neanderthals as populations brushed against each other across the Strait of Gibraltar. The strait itself, only 7.5 nautical miles wide at its narrowest, looms large in this debate. During glacial periods, sea levels fell, narrowing the passage further. The Iberian Peninsula to the north was Neanderthal territory, home to populations in caves like Gibraltar's Gorham's Cave until as recently as 40,000 years ago. On the southern shore, North Africa was populated by Aterian cultures, crafting bone tools, shell beads, and decorated ornaments that reveal modern behavior by 140,000 years ago. It is not difficult to imagine crossings, intentional or accidental, linking the two. A Neanderthal child, gazing across the strait at distant mountains, would have seen Africa shimmering on the horizon. Even without direct crossings, gene flow may have occurred deeper in time, when ancestors of Neanderthals and modern humans still roamed in overlapping ranges. The fossils from Jebel Irhoud, with their Neanderthal-like skull shapes but modern faces, represent a population close to the branching point of the two lineages. In their elongated brain cases, we glimpse a continuity with European Neanderthals, while their facial proportions point forward to ourselves. The Dar es Sultan mandible, dating to between 100,000 and 75,000 years ago, carries that mixed legacy forward into the late Pleistocene. What emerges is not a simple tale of replacement, but a complex web of continuity, convergence, and connection. Neanderthals and North African humans may not have shared the same caves, but they shared traits, adaptations, and perhaps even genes. Northwest Africa, long thought to be a cul-de-sac of prehistory, was in fact a crossroads, its fossils whispering of a kinship that stretched from the Maghreb to the mountains of Europe. The Neanderthal connection in North Africa reminds us that human evolution was not confined by geography. Instead, it was a braided stream, flowing through deserts, across seas, and along forgotten coastlines, binding our lineage to cousins once thought to be strangers. Thank you for watching.